Welcome to our lunch keynote session called The Big Idea Talks. First, I am thrilled to introduce our first speaker, Hanna Skandera. Hanna is president and CEO of the Daniels Fund, which is transforming communities through grant making and college scholarships in Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. Hanna is also the newest member of the Roundtable's board of directors, and I can tell you she has already brought such a wealth of experience to her role in helping us advance our mission. If you know Hanna, you know that she has been a true change agent when it comes to education, both in K through 12 schools and in higher ed. She has taught at some of the most distinguished universities in the nation, and in 2010, she was appointed by Governor Susana Martinez to be New Mexico's Secretary of Education, where she helped achieve the most significant gains for students in that state's recent history. Today, Hanna is going to tell us why civics education matters, and most importantly, how you all can get involved. Please help me welcome Hanna Skandera.
Good morning. Thank you, Christy. And it's great to be here, and I'm excited about these conversations that are coming. But let me start by saying 9 years ago, I became a big sister to Adriana in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And you may be thinking, Santa Fe, so beautiful. You are right. But I will tell you something. Just about 5 minutes from downtown Santa Fe in the plaza is something called Airport Boulevard. And that is where all the service industry families live. And it's no downtown Plaza Santa Fe setting. And Adriana, my little sister, lived there in a single wide with her grandparents, her parents, her twin sisters, her little brother Leo, and her aunt who is still in high school. Despite our living differences, we bonded immediately, and I have incredible memories with Adriana. But one stands out. One day, I was going to pick her up. I walked into the single wide, and there she was with her grandma reading flashcards about our government, about our country. So go with me for just a minute. 8-year-old little girl comes home from school every day for weeks. She sits down on the couch with her grandma and starts quizzing her. What form of government do we have? How many branches of government? What are the first 10 amendments called to the Constitution? It was the US citizenship test she was quizzing her grandma to prepare for. For her family, that test was the utmost importance. Adriana's grandparents came to America for a better life, not just for themselves, for their kids, for their grandkids. They wanted an education for their children and their grandchildren. They wanted better jobs with opportunity. And they wanted a chance to shape their own destiny. That's what America's about. The ability to create our own destiny, to make your own choices about your future. So as you think about this, Adriana's grandma, her name was Dora. She's studying. By the way, she works 3 jobs. And she finds time to learn about her new country. She is determined to be an American. She not only passed the citizenship test, but since then, her entire family has seen the promise of this country. I can tell you with pride, Adriana is now 17. She is a senior in high school at a charter school with a 3.8 GPA, and she is going to college. She is going for opportunity. I can tell you her grandparents have their very own home today. And just a few short blocks away, her parents have their very own home. They are building wealth. This is America. And it's only possible in America. But today, the pride that they have, and frankly, the knowledge that leads to it, seems a little bit scarce. If you think about it, 1/3 of Americans, 1/3, can do what Grandma Dora did. Let me just say that another way. 2/3 of us cannot pass the US citizenship test today. Just let that sink in for a minute. Our country was founded with the belief that civics knowledge was core to the health of our republic. From the very beginning, the founders of our country understood for the American form of government to thrive, the citizens would need to be informed, active defenders of our constitutional order. Think about Benjamin Franklin, 1787. He's coming out of the Constitutional Convention. And a woman calls out to him, "What form of government did you create?" He famously responds, "A republic, if you can keep it." Our founder of the Daniels Fund, Bill Daniels, was a patriot. He fought in 2 wars. He loved our country. And he firmly believed that every generation of Americans needs to understand our civic order if they're going to be patriotic participants in the American experiment. And he especially believed that for young people. Like our forefathers, he knew our country could only succeed with strong civics education at its core. Today, let me just share a few facts. The nation's report card tells us that only 15% of young people are proficient or on grade level in history. A meager 24% are on grade level when it comes to civics. 7% of our young people believe that our democracy is not healthy. And 1 in 5 Americans cannot name a single branch of government. With the loss of civics education in this country, we've lost not just our ability to pass the citizenship test, but we are losing our responsibility and our opportunity to actually move the needle as an individual citizen. Some would say that our country is in crisis, and I tend to agree. Let's just ask, how did we get here? What happened? I've spent a lot of time in schools, and I will tell you, not all, but the majority of our schools simply don't prioritize civics. And when they do, in too many cases, they no longer deliver the basics. In fact, too often, schools have become theater for adult culture wars, completely missing the opportunity and the nuance of our constitutional order. Now, what if I told you, I think we can solve this? And what if I told you, I think we can do it with middle schoolers, in gymnasiums, in auditoriums, in community centers across our country? As I mentioned, I've spent a lot of time in our schools, and what I'm about to tell you is counterintuitive. Our solution to this crisis will not and cannot come solely through our schools. They don't have the right incentives, frankly, and they haven't shown the commitment or the ability to succeed on this issue. The bottom line is we've got to look inside and outside the 4 walls of our schools if we're going to see the change we desperately need. Our big idea at the Daniels Fund is to solve a modern problem by hearkening back to the tools that sustained this country from its very inception. We have partnered with the U.S. Chamber Foundation on something that at first blush sounds kind of cute, silly maybe. But in reality, it's a strategy to increase civic knowledge and protect our republic that has been used since our founding. It's a concept from our past that dates back to 1769. It's a bee, not a buzzy bee, as my little guy would say, bzz, 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 not that one. It's a competition. It's a civics bee. In years preceding the revolution, a bee was understood to be a community social gathering in which friends and neighbors came together around a single activity. Maybe it was raising a barn, making a quilt. A bee is all about the voluntary associations that Tocqueville talked about and identified as a key reason for America's success. Unlike old Europe, where government was the solution to everything, Tocqueville marveled at the uniquely American tendency to form associations of citizens to solve everyday problems. These associations were how Americans have come together to solve problems voluntarily, communally, and outside of government. This is the civics bee. And as crazy as it may sound, we think it can restore American pride for generations to come. And I think it sounds kind of like mom and apple pie. I actually think it is. If you saw some of the pictures, you would too. It's incredible. But it's also intentional and strategic. From the student's age and the educational journey they participate in, the venue, the sponsors, the content, the funding. Nothing about the civics bee is by accident. Age matters. So we work with middle school students. That's very intentional. It requires parents, guardians, and adults to be engaged. It's intergenerational. And middle school is the appropriate age to be focused on the basics. What do you really need to know? so that as you grow into adulthood, you can actually apply your knowledge. The educational journey matters. This is where my education roots come into play. Students actually write an essay about a real community issue that they want to solve. Then they memorize facts from a study guide that we provide. The B journey to advance requires applied knowledge, critical thinking, and memorization of important facts. The essays challenge students to think about how they might improve something. It helps them believe they can be a part of making this country a better place. It awakens in them this possibility that civic engagement can really make a difference. And of course, the content matters hugely. We're working with some of the best and brightest, the Bill of Rights Institute, many others, to make sure that the content is focused on those basics, the things that every young person should know as they come into adulthood. The venue and the sponsors, they matter. Civics bees live not within schools, but with the local Chamber of Commerce. Why chambers, you might ask? It's a strategy. First, they represent a massive nationwide network that has a presence in every corner of our country. Chambers are locally driven. They reflect the community that they live in. And I'll be honest, they avoid the all too often adult culture wars in our schools today. They're built on the association and shared ownership model that Tocqueville talked about. And importantly, unlike the schools that we have today, the incentives for chambers are actually aligned. The civics bees are actually revenue generators that help them build goodwill in their communities. Eventually, they become self-sustaining through corporate and local sponsorships. Bottom line, this is a grassroots strategy with a grass tops implication. Earlier this year, we piloted 5 civics bees in different cities all around this country. In Albuquerque, New Mexico, hundreds of kids showed up. In Brownsville, Texas, the mayor secured prizes for the kids. In Kentucky, this is my favorite, the Secretary of State championed the bee, but the little guy who won, he used his prize money to buy sheep. Sheep. I love that. From Mason City, Iowa, to Brownsville, Texas, to Maryland, each one of these bees was reflective of its community. And I gotta tell you, the response was incredible. Corporate sponsors like Amazon and Southwest came out and gave great prizes on top of the local prizes. They were exciting, they were fun, and they were effective. These kids know civics. They actually told us in post surveys that they had never heard or received this content before, and that they liked studying and it was fun because they got to choose it and it was new material. That could be good news and bad news, mostly bad, but we'll take it as good. And we have chambers all across the country today saying, what do we do to be a part of this civics bee? It is, in short, a win-win scenario. So what seems like maybe a fun and silly concept, we believe can restore knowledge and pride in our country. So where do we go from here? How do we grow impact? Can we scale this thing? I think so. We can go to all 50 states. Actually, we can go to every chamber in all 50 states. We can go to a national televised civics bee, where Americans can watch young people express and know knowledge about their country and rally around what it means to be an American. Every year, 11 million young people participate in the spelling bee. What can we do? See 11 million young people participate in the civics bee. But I will say, this can't happen without each one of you. Together, we can open up an important new playing field for civics education, one that doesn't need permission from bureaucrats, Congress, politicians. It simply needs people like you and me. This is the American way of doing things, not relying on government to solve or rescue us, but relying on individuals to come together, to form their own bee, their own association, to actually move the needle on the things they truly care about. America is all about the ability to have a better life, and this can't happen for Adiana, for Grandma Dora, or for any one of us if we lose our republic. It's dependent on each and every one of us taking this responsibility to heart and then taking action. So I just would close and say this: join us. Ask yourself, which chamber will you support, Or better yet, how many chambers will you support in your state? Let's do this together, one family, one community, one bee at a time. I believe this generation is counting on us. I believe the generations to come are counting on us. And I actually believe that America is counting on us. Thank you.